Welcome to the virtual tour of the Bedford Gallery's current exhibition, Bird Nest Nature. It is comprised of artists selected from an independent jury and invited guest artists. All totaled over 150 artists, all influenced by the beauty of birds. I am Carmen Scavone, a docent in the gallery. With me today are two of my colleagues, Jane Emanuel and Judy Hirabayashi.
Hey Carmen, we're here.
Hi.
We're here for the bird watching.
Oh good, are we on time?
Yes, perfect. So, we are going to share with you stories about the life of birds, illustrated in many, many different ways. As Emily Enders, curator of the Bedford Gallery, writes, birds have long captured the attention of humankind with their exquisite coloring, stunning tusked up feathers, distinctive silhouettes, and graceful flight patterns. Birds entice us to look to the heavens and marvel.
Great, Carmen, thank you so much. Let's start with flight. Alexis Candra's Gyr falcons are native to the Arctic and northern climes. She sees them as inhabiting another dimension as well, the unseen structure that connects everything together, here represented by the white lines and the blue background. We can see how the unseen world has changed as our Gyr falcon beats its way through the air. Well, why did she paint birds in flight? One clue is that she lived in Philadelphia, and there she began researching birds that were dying from flying into windows and buildings while migrating. And then that led her to donate specimens to the local ornithologist museum collection. From there, she created a series of paintings inspired by the research and dioramas at the museum. Our next work, Crystal Moody's stylistic representation of a bird in flight, feels less about any one bird, but you're keenly aware of the majesty of flight and the elemental beauty of the bird moving through its own world. Knowing a little about this piece, How to See, deepens our understanding of why the artist took this simple approach. It comes from her research on mid-century minimalist, hard-edged artist Ellsworth Kelly. Kelly was inspired as a child by John James Audubon, the great realist bird artist. Kelly said, "I believe my early interest in nature taught me how to see." Can you see how both artists are reflected in the piece? Sweet hummers dance in quietly beautiful surroundings in Christina Keith's acrylic titled Hummingbird Soiree. This lovely painting is worth a moment's study. Would the painting have even been possible 150 years ago? We see hummingbird flight thanks to stop-motion cameras, and the background was created via image transfer of an old map of the skies. These tiny birds in flight are truly of the moment, contrasted with the subtle, timeless star map behind them. James Sheffick's installation titled I've Not Had Enough of You fills the alcove under the stairs to the theater and extends up the light shaft. 43 hummingbirds made of painted cast plastic are surrounded by monofilament in front of a video monitor. You're watching the birds and monitor, but then you notice you're on the monitor along with the hummers. What's watching you? It's quite a mystery at first. There's no camera visible, just the lovely little hummers. But knowing a little about the artist may help you figure out where the camera is. Sheffick happened to be installing the piece when we visited the gallery and explained he aimed to build a beautiful piece with a social political twist. Here, 42 of the birds have fake surveillance cameras and one has a real one. The technique of loading a camera into an innocent-looking object or animal has been used by many governments to wage a surveillance campaign. Annalise Farun's power struggle portrays another dark theme, that not every flying bird lives to return to its nest. Here the emphasis is on the power and desperation of these aerial battles. Can we be sure what the outcome will be? This subtle work was created in graphite and pastel powder. Let's turn our attention to this lawyer piece. It's the first of several works we want to share that convey a more abstract take on flight. We read the simple shapes in Anne Halsbury's Flight as birds with wings spread on diaphanous sheets. She created this diptych as a screen print, and per her request, they're hung high above the gallery to catch the light, and to require us to crane our necks to see the panels, much as we almost always have to look up to see birds in flight. Looking at this piece, it's easy to appreciate the powerful instincts that pull migrating birds, often in flocks, back and forth across the globe. But because it's abstract, it also elicits our own idiosyncratic associations with and memories of flights we've seen. I love the word and the phenomenon of murmurations. That's the aerial ballet with tens of thousands of starlings you often see driving north on Highway 5. As someone more poetic than me wrote, it's a twisting, swirling, morphing, shape-shifting, living cloud. As we move to the even more abstract depictions of flight, we have to let go of our knowledge of the real world and trust our feelings and sense of wonder to give us an impression of flight. The more you look, the more you'll see. For example, this lovely set of clay pieces by Lorna Stevens each one of them is about the size of your hand. As you look at them, do you think of a particular species for any one of the pieces? Can you tell what they're made of? The title gives it away, actually. Clay pigeon passenger pigeons. They are made of broken and then glued pieces from the discs of baked clay that are used for target practice, which is called clay pigeon shooting. Knowing that, the title, Clay Pigeon Passenger Pigeons, is at once amusing and sad, given that the last of the billions of passenger pigeons that flew over North America for millennia died in 1914. The last depiction of flight we want you to see is Catherine Courtenay's large abstract painting. There are no shapes that say bird, so we're really happy to read the title, From the Eye of a Bird. Oh, so we can be that bird soaring above the sky, recording our route, looking through the clouds to the land below. This painting's a part of this local artist's ongoing response to the divide between the natural world and man-made environment. She looks for natural patterns as they intersect with the built landscape. In this painting, what might the geometric forms represent? And what I wonder is, could the varied thicknesses of birds' paths represent birds of different sizes? I've actually been wondering if the skittery lines might represent little hummingbirds. And that finishes our tour of the flight paintings and pieces. And so now let's move on to Jane, who's going to talk to you about what birds do with the rest of their time.
How many times have you envied the power and the ability of birds to fly? Icarus did, and so did the Wright brothers. It was glorious. But, you know, a bird's life is not all play and no work. Sometimes you've got to land. So let's go see what birds do when they land. So here we have the painting that will bring us back to land in a most beautiful way. It tells us a lot about the environment, the weather and cohabitation of life. What do you think about when you feast your eyes on this monumental painting titled Emergent by the renowned artist Isabella Kirkland? Carmen, come tell us what's happening here for you.
Oh, I see a magical place between the earth and the sky. A calm, harmonious place.
Judy, can you add something to that?
You know what I see? It's a masterful work by an artist who's also has her hand in science as well. She wants us to really appreciate the absolute uniqueness of all of the birds and actually a bunch of other creatures in the painting. And I think she hopes that if we understand them, we'll take more responsibility for helping preserve nature.
You know, it's always so interesting to hear various people's views when they're looking at art, because every one of us has something different to say. We see art from our own personal perspective. We always tell our young children who are here on school trips to remember that there's never a wrong answer with art. So let's take another look at this too. And Kirkland's hyper-realist style produces an archive of extinct and at-risk species. She has scientifically identified and painstakingly drawn each bird, plant, and animal which would inhabit this imaginary tropical rainforest. She has written on her website that she asks us to bear witness to the inevitable extinction of much of the life here. You can view a complete species chart on Emergent in her Nova series on her website at isabellakirkland.com. At the heart of the bird world is the nest. Artists are fascinated with nests and all that they symbolize. Walnut Creek is lucky to have one of San Francisco artist Sheila Gadini's nests on the first floor of the library. Her love of nature and interest in metaphors associated with nests had been the catalyst for her delicate and meditative graphite-drawn nest series. Birds build more than just a safe home. They create a family. It's the center of the bird life where they bond with a mate, build a life together, raise their babes, and see them off into the world. The nest is an amazing structure. Its intricate construction is often a joint effort of the male and female and bonds them for life. It provides a home for the family, warmth for mama to sit on her eggs, a safe location, and materials with the strength to ward off invaders. In order to capture this contemplative moment in a Ural owl's life, Judy Fong braved a very cold winter in Hokkaido, Japan, to capture this magical moment of beauty. She understands that small elements in a photograph create space for the viewer's imagination. Interestingly, owls usually do not build nests, but take overused ones and just spruce up the furnishings. No room for furnishings in this messy nest. We thought the osprey in Linda Huffman's oil painting might be discussing the loss of habitat, forcing the bird to build its nest on top of a telephone pole. Totally wrong. A telephone pole is actually common for this species. The height provides safety and allows a good landing pad for the awkward ospreys, who are happily growing in number. Some nests are not bird-made. Keyvan Shovier tells ancient stories from his native Iran and discusses immigration and displacement in his mystical installations. Here he installs 7 birdhouses, complete with bird calls, featuring Simurgh, a mythical bird who in a renowned 12th century Persian poem is sought by 30 other birds on a harrowing journey through 7 valleys to become their leader and a symbol of unity. Shovier revived this project during the recent debates on the Muslim travel ban, which coincidentally involved 7 Muslim countries. So, nests lead to empty nests. After many days feeding their babies and preparing them for the dangerous world, the inevitable happens. The young ones fly the coop. Many of us know the feelings that go along with that stage of life, a mixture of pride, sadness, and longing. The art of Anne Hollingsworth expresses that feeling bluntly and boldly with her osprey nest made of cast crystal. Do you think her choice of material was intentional? Could the brittleness and fragility of glass be a metaphor for the always changing nature of the family unit?
family relationships to be handled with care at all times.
On the other hand, Linda Belden, a fiber artist, constructs intricate and delicate essays with thread and on a sewing machine, choosing a traditionally female art form that lovingly conveys the nature of motherhood and home. Each of her nests is different, just as each child born is unique and special. We'll talk more about her method later. A look at the day of life in the nest doesn't really sound that different from ours. In fact, it feels kind of familiar. The day begins early, everyone up, gather breakfast, and feed the kids. Mom repairs some holes in the house and Dad goes off to hunt. Some hunt high in Lowery Davenport's beautifully intricate graphite drawing, while others hunt low. This is artist Alexander Diaz. And at the end of the day, they return home with the spoils. This wonderful photograph is by artists Wendy Sparks and Jeff Torquemada. Dad makes time to play Go Fly with the kids. Then he meets a bro on the wire. This photo is by artist Nick Pedersen. Mom gets a chance to sing the latest hits with friends. Then there's time to just hang out downtown. But let's pause for a minute to note how beautifully Suzanne Anderson Carey captured those very common, often pesky pigeons. It looks like a photo, but if you get closer, come on in here really close, you'll see a lot of color kind of outlining the birds in a very delicate and beautiful way that really bring them alive and make the blackness of the paint so rich. These kind of reminded me of artist Wayne Thiebaud, who outlines his cakes and pies with a little bit of yellow and red and sticks just a little color in it to liven up the folks. So enjoy this crowd. Sing along with them. Jose Nunez takes quite a different approach to portray a mass of birds. He uses simple forms to delineate his subjects. As we see here, he lines them up in an orderly way. And as in this piece, he often elongates his subject or repeats it to fill the picture frame. Nunez attends a daily art workshop at Creativity Explored in San Francisco, where professional artists guide developmentally challenged adults in a full range of the aspects of art. Attendees are encouraged to enter their work in a variety of art exhibitions and even offer their work for sale. The Bedford regularly shows art from this workshop. Nunez has been a member there for about 20 years, and his subjects often speak of his days in the fields and of the mythology of his native El Salvador. So back to our day in the life of the birds, Mom sneaks off for a soak in the tub. This artist is Diane Andrews Hall. While she's having a grand afternoon, the neighborhood parrot talks about the day. This is by artist Anna Valdez. So with all of these birds in their day, there are no helicopter parents here, just strong wings. As dusk sets in, the family dreams of their time in their rich and beautiful neighborhood. Carrie Litterer's delicately rendered birds frolic in the world of forest where nature's exuberance reigns. She focuses on the science of fractals, which are complex geometric figures in nature, such as the fronds on a fern, which repeat each time on a smaller scale. I'm going to point this out for you. Can you see in this detail the white painted patterns that change from circles to dots? There's some here and there's some here. Those are her expression of the fractals in nature. Wouldn't you like to join these birds for a romp and forget your cares of the day? We want to take this moment to honor artist Carrie Litterer, the creative and inspiring curator of the Bedford Gallery, who recently retired after 25 years of presenting innovative and stimulating exhibitions. Darkness falls, and it's not always moonlit and inviting. The dangers of the night, and even at other times in the birdland, are represented by Cara Maria as she surrounds a solemn portrait of an owl with the noisy comic book imagery of bam, pop, and kazoom to remind us that the future of many birds is threatened in an increasingly inhospitable habitat. Cara Maria's forests, like Isabella Kirtland's rainforest we saw earlier, speak directly to us in their individual artistic styles about the alarming concern for the fragile status of birds in our world that's shared by many of the exhibit's artists. So I'd like to turn this over to Carmen to talk with us about how all these artists made these marvelous works. Thank you.
With over 170 works in the exhibition, you can be sure that many different materials were used. I would like to show you works that used unusual materials and other works that use common materials in unusual ways. I am standing under Boreal Owl by Emma Bolton. She uses birch bark, driftwood, and stones to create this charming owl. Many artists use a combination of found natural objects and standard artist materials. For Beyond the Realm of Bird, number 21 to 40, Ruth Giost used 20 individual wood squares gilded in gold to showcase bird feathers, including parrot, cockatoo, conure, peacock, pheasant, chicken, and others. The feathers are given to her by a community of friends that accumulate the seasonal molts of their birds. For plush-crested jay and epiphytes, Alicia Good used an actual taxidermied bird with a branch and live epiphytes. She also used resin, wax, and paper to create the red orchid and combine all the components. A different combination of artist materials and found objects are used to create the Sweet Little Egret by Jeannie Wakeland, made of clay sitting on a bed of driftwood and moss. Many artists use textiles in all sorts of ways. Krupa Paranjape created these works, Indian Pita and Indian Greater Cocoa, by embroidering and painting by hand on fabric. This is a most unusual piece. I've never seen anything like it. Stephanie Metz calls this series of work wool drawings, using dark wool fibers as a drawing medium by punching it through paper, giving it a dimensional but also graphic effect. This piece is called Jacobin. Jane talked about Linda Belden's empty nests when talking about where birds live. Let's look at this piece again from a materials point of view. Linda made these using a free motion embroidery machine with regular sewing thread. This is a quilting technique. The free motion machine allows her to sew in every direction, creating a sheet of stitches. Notice that you don't see any fabric. She sewed on a stabilizer that washes away, leaving only the stitches. She used a stiffener to mold the nests. Let's take another look at Osprey 6 by Anne Hollingsworth. This is made of cast crystal. The process is the same as metal casting. Each branch was carved in wax. A mold was made by encasing each wax branch in plaster, then melting the wax out of the mold. Molten crystal is poured into the mold. When the pieces have set, the mold is removed and the branches are fused together to create the nest. It looks heavy, but is really quite delicate. The ancient medium of mosaic uses glass and stone tiles to make an image. This beautiful mosaic by Karen Hill, called P1000440, is made from traditional mosaic stone tiles and stained glass. Look how the stained glass shimmers and adds texture to the peacock's tail. Now I would like to talk about the many different ways paper is used. Judy Hirabayashi, yes, my colleague Judy, who talked about flight earlier, uses pages from National Geographic magazines in her mixed media collages. For this one, Bird Finding Herself, she coated the pages with Citrusol to move the ink around on the paper. She combines the pages and ties them with cord to create this jewel-like image. Lucretia Beeler cut this image, and Hinga sunbathing from one sheet of paper using a scissors. Here is Larry Hatfield's red-crowned crane. He also uses paper and scissors to create his pieces. But Larry used many sheets of paper, molded to form the shape, and cut to suggest feathers. Now I want to show you this little bird on a branch bursting out of the picture frame. This is made from reused craft paper, wire, fabric, and wood. The artist is Asaki Oda, and the work is called Nestled Number 1. Notice the shadows the 3D image makes. Another three-dimensional work contained in a frame is Amy Baldwin's Encephera with Brugmansia, or as we would say, sword-billed hummingbird with angel's trumpet. This is made from hand-cut and tinted crepe paper feathers, wire, acrylic paint, paper mache, and glass eyes. Amy calls her technique vegan taxidermy. She actually has a company called Vegan Taxidermy where she sells her birds, animals, and flowers. Since you are a watercolor class, I thought I would talk about a few of the watercolors in the exhibition. Susan Rutledge uses saturated, intense color, covering the entire sheet of paper to create this painting, The Raven's Nest. By contrast, Michelle Theberge takes a minimalist approach, using translucent washes for her painting, Fox Sparrow. Notice how much unpainted space there is around and within the figure of the bird. The areas without the paint are as important to the composition as the paint itself. Ellen Little specializes in large format watercolors. This piece, called Urban Bird 25, is from her Urban Bird project, and it measures 4.5 by 6 feet. Now, let's look at an unusually small piece. Andy Thrams creates small artist books working in nature using watercolor, gouache, and ink on paper. Before we end the exhibition, I want to show you one final piece. This is Sitting Ducks by Michael Padroni. It is 9 feet 4 inches high, 14 feet long, and 3 feet deep. There's always a challenge in installing an exhibition. This was the challenge for a bird nest nature. As usual, Bedford proprietor Eric Mortensen was working with 6 by 6 photographs of the artwork to create the exhibition plan. For this piece, he thought he was working with a tabletop sculpture sized in inches, not feet. Imagine his surprise when this arrived at the gallery in 12 crates. It took 3 hours to take them off the truck and get them into the gallery. Eric had to redo the entire installation plan. The artist had to be called in, thank goodness he's local, to assemble it. It took Michael 3 6-hour days to do it. It was all worth it. It's a great addition to the exhibition. Thank you for being with us today. Speaking for Jane, Judy, and myself, we look forward to seeing you in the gallery as soon as the Bedford reopens.
In these uncertain times, Bedford Gallery has continued to support the Walnut Creek community through online tours and programming. Please consider donating to help this cultural institution continue to thrive. visit www.bedfordgallery.org.